Hello, everyone. How's it going? So I'm going to be, so this is our first wellness chat. So there might be some little hiccups that we'll, we'll work through, but my goal is to share a presentation with everyone that I'll just kind of quickly go through. Um, Hopefully a lot of you may have gotten an email, some handouts that just have some good general information on heart health. Um, and we'll talk about in a moment, but February is American Heart Month. And so it's a time to kind of think about your heart. And there's actually a calendar, which was one of the handouts that just has like each day a little activity. I'll show that calendar in a moment. If you would like this, like any of these handouts, or would like an email of the presentation, feel free to come by and let me know. I can send it to you. The presentation is just kind of a brief overview of a lot of things. But yeah, let me go ahead and share that. Let me get this all ready here. Oops. Okay, share screen. I believe I can just share this. All right. Can everyone see this? Start.
Yeah, we see it. We
You can
see
see
it.
it. Okay, great. Cool. All right. It's been a while since I've done a presentation like this on Zoom, and it's a little different. So, heart health is our topic for today. A really other quick piece of information before we jump into the presentation. We will be doing these wellness chat converse or discussions and presentations on the 2nd and 4th Friday of every month is our goal. So first one is heart health because it's since February is American Heart Month. I'll go ahead and just click that. So it's American Heart Month, and so there's actually a lot of programs, a lot of information online you could also get. But there was a few flyers, handouts that I had sent over that may or may not have been sent to some of you. If you want them, just let me know at the end, and I can get that sent out. But this is on this first slide, just one example of some activities you can do that the American Heart Health people kind of put together, and they're all going to be kind of related to what we're talking about today, how to keep your heart healthy. All right, so this is pretty obvious, but your heart is super important. In the body pumps on average 2.5 billion times in the average lifetime, pumping millions of gallons of blood. And blood carries not only oxygen, which we often think of, but hormones, nutrients. It gets rid of waste, all the essential cells, stem cells that aid in healing the body. So blood, obviously very important, needs to be pumped around the body to be effective. And when the heart stops, things will fail, and almost instantly, oftentimes, many of the systems, which is why people like me and other healthcare professionals know CPR and things to keep the heart going. So we want to keep our heart going because you can't really do much without it. And of course, you can't mention heart health without mentioning, the diseases of the heart and the number one actually cause of death in America is cardiovascular disease. Now, this covers all types of diseases related to the heart and blood vessels. So, heart attack, stroke, for example, are under that umbrella. But it is the number one killer. So, obviously, really important to keep your heart healthy. And the most common one, and the one that we'll kind of be focusing in on, is coronary heart disease. Now, this is often what we think of when someone gets a heart attack. It's typically because of coronary heart disease. And as you can see, pretty significant number of Americans die from just coronary heart disease every year. Now, risk factors that go into getting heart disease and these conditions, your age. For men, it's a little younger, if you're over age 45, women, if you're over 55. Family history, you've had parents or uncles, aunts anyone in the family that's had it, especially if they had an earlier onset, they had it for men if they had it before 55, and for women if they had it before 65, then that means you have a family history, and there's a chance that you could get it. High blood pressure and high cholesterol are other indicators that could lead to heart disease. Being overweight, being diabetic, having low physical activity or not having a regular physical activity routine. Being under high stress is also key. And eating an unhealthy diet and smoking. Now, I have a little asterisk next to the conditions, the risk factors that we can control to some degree. So you can see, actually, other than your age and your family history, there's a lot of things you can do to keep your heart healthy and prevent the chance of having some kind of heart condition. All right. So how do we maintain a healthy heart? The first thing that everyone, and probably all do regularly anyways, but getting your blood pressure and your cholesterol checked, and knowing those numbers, that's the first kind of indicator, because high blood pressure is very strongly related, and your cholesterol, as we'll talk about, often having bad cholesterol will create more of the plaques and things that clog up the arteries and can lead to heart disease. Choosing heart healthy foods is the next thing to really focus on. Your diet really does play an important role. Exercising regularly, managing your weight, managing your stress, not smoking, and getting good quality sleep, all are really important. All things that we can do to keep your heart happy and healthy. So first of all, knowing your blood pressure and cholesterol levels. High blood pressure puts you at high risk of all kinds of health problems, particularly stroke and heart attack. So high blood pressure, often there's restriction in your blood vessels, and so it's more likely that blood flow can be stopped, especially if there's plaque buildup, and so it's strongly related to these issues. And high blood pressure, you get there's a higher risk of getting high blood pressure as you get older, if you're overweight, if you have a poor diet, lack of physical activity, and if you have diabetes. So it actually shares a lot of the same kind of risk factors that just heart disease as a whole has. So if you can control some of these, then there's less chance you'll get high blood pressure. High blood cholesterol is the condition in which your blood has unhealthy levels of cholesterol. And so cholesterol, when it's unhealthy, it will typically kind of stick and stay in kind of form a plaque along your blood vessels because of its waxy nature. And so this is the primary reason that those plaques can build up that lead to your heart disease and stroke and such. Now there is good cholesterol too, and now these are labeled good as HDL and bad as LDL. And when you get this checked, it would be through a blood test, and it would tell you their levels. And a doctor would be able to tell you, whether you need to do anything about that. Also, I want to go back with the blood pressure. High blood pressure is anything over 140 over 90, generally speaking. If you start to get into like the 130 over 80 range, that's more of a pre-hypertension range, and it is cause for change. If you have like a 130 over 80, you definitely want to start being mindful of that, being more active and such. If you have higher blood pressure, consistently have over 140 or over 140 over 90, then that probably means you have high blood pressure. And often that will mean, you may need to take medication to kind of help control that. And if at any point you have questions, you can wave, or if you have any way of maybe taking note, we can discuss some of these things at the end. So So knowing your blood pressure now let's go into exercise. I'm the fitness person, so that's one of the ways that one of the areas that I really specialize and like to help people with. So exercise is a really important thing for maintaining a healthy heart. On average, to keep your heart healthy, you want to partake in 2.5 minutes, 2 hours and 30 minutes, sorry, of moderate aerobic activity. So what we might call cardio activity, things like walking, dancing, biking, maybe jogging. In our regular daily fitness class, we do a lot of, kind of standing, quick routines, anything that ultimately gets you breathing a little heavier, that will maybe help you break a little sweat, is good moderate aerobic activity. And that's really the what you want to focus on for a strong heart. Now, there also are findings that 2 days, at least 2 days on average, of strength or resistance training is also recommended because it helps you maximize the benefits of your physical activity. So if you're stronger, if your muscles are stronger, you're typically going to be able to put more force, more output into your cardio activities as well, and that's going to have a stronger effect on your heart. But exercise is really, really important. So make sure you're doing that regularly. And of course, maybe if you already have a heart condition, there sometimes are limitations for that too. So always listen to a doctor before you start exercise routine. And sometimes there are limitations as to how much and what heart rate you may need and such. But generally speaking, you want to stay active, have a regular active routine. Next, nutrition. So nutrition really is important because it directly affects our blood pressure and our cholesterol levels in the body. And of course, both of those are really important for our heart, maintaining healthy levels of both. So first of all, foods that you want to avoid. So heart healthy diet shouldn't have foods that are really high in what's known as saturated and trans fats. Saturated fats are typically found in like your red meats. What are some other examples here? So red meat, anything with a lot of fat that's oily, bacon, for instance, will have a lot of saturated fat. I have another list right here. Okay. So yeah, so anything that has excess fat, anything that has skin on it too, fried chicken, for instance, typically is going to have more saturated fat. Trans fats, on the other hand, are arguably even worse. If you can avoid eating any food with trans fat altogether, that's always recommended. Trans fat is added to a lot of like processed foods. Actually, oftentimes popcorn, surprisingly, has trans fat added into it as like a flavor kind of enhancer. But there has been a move because trans fat has such a negative effect on the body to remove it from most foods that are served. But I would always check if you have the ability to check the nutrition label on a food you buy or that you get. Always double check for those two fats, saturated fat and trans fat. Saturated fat is okay in small amounts, but trans fat ideally avoid as much as possible to maintain heart health. You also want to avoid too much sugar because, as we talked about, right, diabetes is really bad, really exacerbates heart issues. So anything with added sugars is no good. Focus more on natural sweet things like fruit. And anything that's high in sodium. High salt diets will raise your blood pressure significantly. So make sure that you are managing sodium in your diet, anything that's too salty. Some heart healthy items, things that are high in foods that are high in fiber, whole grains and fruits and veggies. Really focus on that. You really can't eat too many, especially vegetables. Vegetables are really, really important. Fruits, it's really good as well, but just be mindful there is always a decent amount of sugar with fruit. So don't eat an excessive amount of fruit is the main rule with that.
Brent,
Yes.
can I talk to you about your comment about sodium?
What about, oh, can I talk more about sodium?
Yeah, I eat most of my meals from the kitchen.
Uh-huh.
My understanding is that they are very good about not over salting that food. So I don't add salt to it
Yeah.
and I just take what I get. Is that okay?
That should be fine. And that's something I hope to maybe talk about maybe in the future project that I can do is work with the kitchen a little bit just to kind of see, maybe even be able to create a nutrition label or something. But I would say what they're serving, that is normally something that is on their mind. They want the foods that they're serving to be healthy. If I would be more cautious if you are adding extra salt, then and you know want to be mindful of your sodium, then you probably don't want to add any extra. If you take what they give you, I I, I would think that would be okay. That should be fine. But that was a good question, and down the line too, because I know the food that is being served probably isn't a nutrition label. Maybe that is something that we can work on.
What are the examples of trans fats, especially in popcorn?
Yeah, let me. So some examples. Certain desserts will have it, especially like a more processed thing, like a cookie that you get in a wrapper. Sometimes can have them. It says microwave popcorn, frozen pizzas or frozen meals.
Yeah, but what is it?
Oh, what is the trans fat? Like
Yeah.
it, that's a good, it's a type of fat. Like it's basically, if you ever, another example is hydrogenated oil. If you ever, that's
Yeah.
the
Okay.
technical term for it. So
Right.
certain oils actually, use hydrogenated, I think like Crisco, I think typically uses it. And that's something that, it may have enough where they can say it's zero trans fat per serving, but in excessive amounts, it actually ends up being in the diet. You can't really outright avoid it, but it's just in a lot of things in small amounts. And so if it's ever on, especially the nutrition label, it means like there's an excessive amount that you probably
Yeah.
shouldn't be consuming.
So olive oil would not.
No, olive oil is good. And in fact, actually, what we'll talk, in the healthy items, it's actually listed. There are good fats there. So I'll talk in a moment here about the good fats. And but the saturated and trans fat. Saturated always just, I think of like meats, red meats in particular, and skin and stuff like that. Trans fat more in like your processed things. Things that you buy at a store that are in a wrapper often can have trans fat. I know McDonald's used to have a lot of trans fat in their food, but they've actually since got rid of that because of the issues with it. But olive oil, so let me actually go to the things that we want. One moment here. Okay, sorry. Foods to eat. All right, so so oils that are good, that are fine: canola oil, corn oil, olive oil, safflower oil, sesame oil, sunflower oil, and soybean oil. So most oils are pretty fine. Actually, coconut and palm oil though are not as good. They tend to be high in saturated fat. But most other oils tend to be fine. Olive oil in particular is is quite healthy for you. Yeah, so yeah, with the heart healthy items, high fiber foods are important, and healthy fats like olive oil. That's why the Mediterranean diet often is something that's recommended for a healthy heart. And then finally, for nutrition, limiting alcohol consumption is key. If you don't drink, it's better not to start. Ideally less than a drink a day for women, less than 2 for men, but really limit alcohol as much as possible. It's always a good rule of thumb. There's been the talk about a glass of red wine is good for your heart. It's the research is up in the air with that. All right, and finally, some other ways to improve your heart. So we've talked about physical activity, we talked about nutrition, but there are other factors too that will really help. Managing stress is really important. Often, and in fact, because of high stress jobs and everything, that there's been studies that show that may have been the reason why often men like have had often more association with heart disease is anyone that works in a really high stress job. Often has a higher tendency. So you want to manage your stress, find ways to manage it. Some ways are breathing exercises, meditation, talking to a professional like a counselor, socializing, with friends. Being physically active helps actually work out any negative stress. So one of the negative problems with stress, when you have too much stress, there's the stress hormone that gets kind of at these high levels in your blood, and that can actually, when it's in really high levels, it's not able to be processed quickly enough, and that can be damaging to your blood vessels. And not to mention, it can raise your blood pressure and constrict your blood vessels. So something like exercise actually is a natural means of using, kind of reabsorbing any of that negative waste that's produced from high stress.
Can I talk about stress a little bit? Because last night I had a dream in which I was driving, something I have not done for 10 years, by the way.
Oh yeah.
And I was not able to control the car. It was going backwards when I wanted to go forward. It was speeding when I wanted to go slow. I couldn't control the direction. I couldn't control anything. Obviously, that was stressful, even in a dream.
Yeah.
How do I control that?
Well, I would say, short bursts of stress like that, that was a scary dream, and I'm sure we all get that. I know I know I've, with COVID, right? There's a lot of COVID dreams I've I've had. But the thing with that, at least, is that it's short term, and so when you wake up, at least there's that relief factor, and you can kind of process. Really, what's worse is when you have chronic stress. So when you are just constantly in a state of stress, you're working in an environment that is causing you constant stress, that is when it's going to be really negative on the body. A little bit of stress here and there is actually not a bad thing, because, like I said, that it produces some hormone in the blood that is normally pretty easily processed. But when you're under chronic stress, that's typically going to be when it has that really negative effect on your heart. And managing the stress too can lead to other heart healthy activities, right? Like being physically active is one way to manage stress. It also is good for the heart. So yeah, and there's also even things like you can die from a broken heart. That's actually when somebody has a broken heart, right? They aren't processing sorrow and grief very well. That actually takes a toll on the heart, and some of these stress management techniques can help kind of alleviate that tension and let you get out of that chronic state of stress and into just the more natural up and down. So yeah, and we can discuss a little more on that, but I'll just finish up with these last two. Not smoking, of course. So if you do smoke, I try to look into cessation programs, because smoking, of course, it has many negative health effects, but is very, very bad for your cardiovascular system. It restricts our blood vessels and really just exacerbates any heart condition. And finally, getting good quality sleep is really important. It varies. For adults, though, typically 7 to 9 hours is recommended. And if you do less than that, sleep has these very natural patterns, these kinds of, the REM sleep and deep sleep. And if you don't give yourself enough sleep, you're not going to have enough time in each of these phases of sleep, and that can actually really negatively affect not only your heart, but many parts, many organs in the body, because sleep is when the body's kind of fixing itself, and a lot of processing is being done. In particular, while you sleep, your blood vessels, that's typically a time that your blood vessels are being healed and repaired, is when we are asleep. So, but it also helps maintain balance of your hormones, can keep you from feeling hungry, right? So if you have maybe managing weight is a problem, if you're not getting enough sleep, that's going to make it worse. It can mess up your hormones so that you're hungry more often. And
Okay.
it also
Hey.
helps with your immune system.
Brett, does a nap count as healthy sleep, or when you fall asleep watching TV?
Well, I mean, I think taking naps is not a bad thing. But I wouldn't substitute it for, like, let's say, oh, well, I only slept 5 hours last night, so I'm gonna, get an extra 2 hours napping. You can't
Okay.
really. It's not really a pick and choose. Ideally, you do want to get at least 7 hours a night. Now, it does
Of
vary a
REM.
little bit for people, but 7 is recommended.
Yeah,
At
REM
least.
sleep. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. And again, that sleep time is where the body is really restoring itself, repairing things like blood vessels. It's also a good time if you're doing exercise. That's the time that your muscles are typically going to be developing and growing. So it gives the body the time to really optimize itself. And yeah, so that was just the overview. So or just our presentation on just what you can generally do for heart health. Is there any other questions or any other slides anyone would like to talk about, or anyone want to share anything?
What is the normal blood pressure rate?
Normal is about 120 over 70.
120. Wow.
120 over 70. Yeah.
Okay.
Ideally, and really good blood pressure might be even 110 over 60. Although if you go too low, if you go beyond that, then it's then you're starting to get into another negative thing, which is low blood pressure. Blood pressure.
So 130 is okay?
130, yeah, 130 is kind of in that what we call pre-hypertension. So
Okay.
it's a little, it's kind of leaning that way. Probably want to be a little more mindful of your diet, especially sodium intake, and make sure you're regularly exercising, which I know you do.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other?
This is Sarah.
Hi, Sarah.
You said something about 2.5 hours of exercise. I guess you're saying weekly?
Yeah, per week. Yeah. I think I scrambled through that a little. Yeah, that's per week. So that comes to about 30 minutes a day for 5 days.
Good. Okay.
So yeah, and ideally that's your aerobic activity. So things like walking. We do at least 3 days that are focused on aerobics in our daily fitness class, and in the chair fitness class as well. So yeah, but at least 30 minutes. Now they also say you can substitute if you are able to do more rigorous type of exercise. You can actually have that time. You can do if it's more of a rigorous activity. So you could do 15 minutes of a rigorous activity, and that will still have a very positive and kind of the same effect overall on your heart health. But for the average person, probably, for most of us, the 30 minutes a day is a good goal. And you could always do more. Any other questions? We have Zoom is saying 8 minutes left right now. So we could always end early too, but I just wanted to make sure. And I think the meeting was put on mute when I initiated it. So if you do have any questions, you can unmute yourself, which if you move the mouse, that highlight.
Well, I have a comment.
Uh-huh.
Do you think you could turn off your screen sharing so that people
sure.
can
Yeah, let me do that right now. There we go.
I've been just observing over the years how things we used to believe are no longer true. They used to talk about how bad eggs are for you, and of course, low-fat diet. There was a whole craze of low-fat diets that we were all subject to, and without a whole lot of good evidence. And when they finally started doing rigorous trials, it turned out the people on low-fat diets did worse.
Yeah, you're that's actually really good thing to bring up, because you're absolutely right. I know when I took nutrition, it that was one of the things that they said. Unfortunately, the research in nutrition kind of goes up and down. But I mean, of course, as we're going further, there's a building body of evidence that does suggest, yeah, low fat is not really a good idea unless you're trying to minimize like calories because you're obese or something, and really, and that's a major thing. But for the most part, yeah, there are healthy fats, and that do actually fortify your heart, for instance, like olive oil. But yeah, but Tom, you're absolutely right. It is kind of frustrating. I know you learn one thing, eggs are bad or something, and actually the egg question too does go up and down. Like I swear, it seems like every other year there's somebody that says, oh no, eggs actually are bad, and or you should only be eating this many because they're high in cholesterol. But there's good cholesterol too. So, and the way that cholesterol works in the body, there's no food that just has bad cholesterol or just has good cholesterol. It's kind of how the body processes it ultimately, and that's why it's hard to have these absolute statements on a lot of things, because it's really a combination of active things. How active you are, and well balanced your diet is, actually will play a role in how the cholesterol, for instance, manifests as either good or bad. And so there's tricky things.
There's a paper that I just came across this morning, a paper from last year, that's reevaluating saturated fats. These guys reviewed the literature, and they came to this is astounding, but they came to the conclusion that saturated fats, including full-fat dairy products, uncooked meat, they found no evidence linking those to cardiovascular disease. So, that's a real head scratcher, and I'm going to have to read that paper and see what they're talking about.
That is, yeah, very interesting. But at the same time, at least when it comes to saturated fat, it is in a lot of foods that aren't necessarily outright unhealthy. Like a little red meat here and there is not a bad thing. So I think, when it comes to nutrition, it's never an all or nothing kind of mentality, except for maybe trans fat. Trans fat is one of these like processed fats that we probably should avoid. But saturated fat, actually, I mean, yeah, there is a certain amount that currently in the diet that you can have and very safely, and it won't have any negative detriment. But
Yeah, Brett, they're promoting coconut oil as healthy for you, but it's really saturated fat.
yeah, it has a lot of saturated fat. Now again, as we were kind of saying, saturated fat it's not something you have to outright avoid, but yeah, I mean, I wouldn't replace everything with coconut oil either, because then you're going to be getting probably way more than you should be having.
Right.
So it's more of a balance, yeah, with a lot of these things. Yeah. But very, very good points there. That's anyone have other feedback? We have 3.5 minutes, so these are good conversations, good things to bring up. Cool. It's good turnout today. I'm glad.
Hello, Brent.
Yeah.
Brent, this is Dr. Prakash. Good talk.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Yeah, sodium intake. In elderly, sodium intake is critical. And the blood pressure, of course, 130/80 is ideal, but up to 140/80, as long as it doesn't go beyond 90 diastolic, you're okay.
Yeah. I know that like the 130 over like up to 90, 130/90 is like the max. But yeah, I know generally.
Once you cross,
Yeah, and I also know as we get older, there's your blood pressure probably will kind of go up a little bit.
Yeah, once you cross diastolic over 90, it's not good. But most of us, 80 plus, up to 140/80 is fine.
I see.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. No, that's good insight. I know for me, personally, with my education and background, the heart wasn't my main focus. So I know there's definitely people, cardiologists and such that know so much more. And it would be, maybe one day we'll, be able to have a discussion from.
Yeah, it'll be good if everybody walks 15 minutes to 30 minutes a day. Yeah, people are, with this virus stuff, people are not very active, and that's not very good.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Yeah,
Very
look
true.
forward to your gym.
Yeah. Well, we are talking about getting it open in March, and probably starting with a like an appointment-based system. But that is the talks are in process. It should be open sooner than later, actually.
Yeah, it will be good, sooner if they can open the whole thing.
Yeah.
At least the gym with open windows and door, and that people can have a mask and maintain a distance. And if
Yep.
you have a fan going all the time, I don't think there's any real problem with this, with all of us who are already vaccinated.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, exactly. Since everyone is vaccinated and there's been at least a couple of weeks after both vaccinations, should make it much safer. And we are doing a few things, going to be rearranging a few things in the gym to make it safe. So there'll be announcements on that soon. It looks like we have less than a minute left. So I think I'm going to go ahead and officially end it. But thank you all very much for joining our first wellness chat. We'll be doing it again in 2 weeks. And I'm sorry, I don't have the exact date. But it'll be 2 weeks from today. I'm going to be on the 4th Friday of February. And there'll be an announcement for that. So thank you very much and have a great weekend. I will see you all on Tuesday. I have Monday off. So see you Tuesday and take care. All the best.
Thank you, Brent. Thank you, Brent.
Thank you.